Welcome to Local Licks. My name is Pat McLoughlin. My guest this week, an amazing guest, everybody, calling in from Los Angeles, California, is Gary Ballen.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the freaks, clocking the dough. Went to the park to get the scoop. Knuckleheads out there, cold shooting some hoops. A car pulls up, who can it be? A fresh El Camino rolling Kilo G. He rolled down his window.
Gary, welcome to Local Licks.
Hello, Pat. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm fine. I'm going to tell everybody right up front, you listeners today, those of you listening on podcast are probably going to hear one of the most unique, fascinating stories that Local Licks has ever carried. And Gary, I'm just absolutely amazed at the road you've taken. And, we introduced Easy E to kind of bring this show in to give somebody an idea, but we're going to play so many different songs that you've got some kind of a hand in that it's going to be amazing. You should be proud of yourself.
Pat, you know what? I love Columbus, but I'm glad I'm not there today because I hear it's about 0 degrees.
You have got that right, everybody. We're cutting this on one of the coldest days of 2018, January of 2018. Gary, what is the temperature out where you are at? Because it's 1 degree above zero.
I'm north of L.A. I'm a place called Oxnard, and it's about 65 degrees.
Oh, you're killing us, man. Well, I'm going to take you back to some cold memories, because you certainly saw your share when you first grew up in Cleveland. How many years did you live in Cleveland before you moved to Columbus?
Born in 52, and I moved to Columbus in 61.
61, okay.
So I was there 9 years, and there was 9 good years in Cleveland, but I really loved Columbus.
What brought your family to Columbus?
My dad had a job change, so
okay.
We moved from Cleveland to Columbus. But in Cleveland, I picked up my first guitar when I was about 9 years old.
Really?
And yeah, that kind of started the whole road. Was
your mom and dad both of a musical intent, or were you a black sheep, if you will?
No, they were very musical. They didn't play, but they always had records going on, always. So, we had music around us all the time, and, that was back in the late 50s, early 60s. So it was a lot of the Frank Sinatra, Johnny Mathis, Andy Williams, musicals, that kind of stuff. So I picked it up early, but I had a little gang of little juvenile delinquents that I was head of, called Ballen's Army.
Okay.
Now, my parents kind of wanted to change my focus. So a neighbor offered us a nice 1952 015 Martin guitar, which
wow.
I still have.
You do.
Play. And that really changed my focus. And I loved it from the start, and I took lessons and just kept playing.
How did the gang feel about you kind of going the other direction? Yeah.
So it was time to go find a new place, and luckily I moved to Napoleon Avenue.
You did.
Right down the street from the old Kahiki.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a block away from Eastmore High School.
Which was where you went to high school.
Yeah, I went to Eastmore Junior High when it first opened, and then Eastmore High School. I went to Fairmore Elementary School. And it's funny because a lot of the friends I had in elementary school really influenced my life over the years, up until now. Even our old friend Rick Bauer, the guy who introduced you to me,
yeah,
we were in our first bands in elementary school called the Pretzels.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because Rick was insistent that I sneak that into the conversation. How was the Pretzels?
We were great, as far as I can remember, which is nothing. But I played guitar, Rick played drums. We had a guy named Greg Levy.
Okay.
Now, Greg ended up being one of the main attorneys for the NFL. He still is. He's probably been an attorney for the NFL for 20 years. We had another guy who I can't remember.
Okay.
But the Beatles just came out, so we all had Beatles sheet music, and we'd play these songs.
Now, is this where Barry Kay steps in? Was he in the Pretzels, or does he come after that?
No, Barry Kay, I also knew him in elementary school at Fairmore.
Okay.
But, no, we started playing together in junior high, at Eastmore Junior High.
Okay.
And Barry was a good friend of mine, and he was a great keyboard player. and great singer, and he was one of the biggest influences in my life. He's the reason I moved to California.
No kidding. I want to get to that, but I'm going to hold you to Eastmore for a little bit because you also hung around with a pretty interesting character. And I brought Tico Bob Street up to my own guitar player in the Circle and in the Gas Pump Jockeys, Don White, and he knew Tico. Tell us a little bit about what you did with Tico and Tico Bob, and he also does
Tico Bob, Robert Street. Tico Bob was the first black dude I think I ever met. And this is in junior high school.
Okay.
Eastmore Junior High. Me and him would kind of always be the first ones at school. And we got to be really good friends, and me being a musician, and he was a great singer. He was in all the choirs and everything.
All right.
But he really kind of got me into more Motown. I had the British Invasion down.
Right.
I could play any Jerry and the Pacemakers, Dave Clark 5, Beatles was always my favorite group, Searchers, so I could play all that. But when I got to junior high, it was half black, half white school.
Right.
So Tico was one of my first friends, and we started, he kind of turned me on to Temptations, Four Tops,
sure,
Impressions, all that kind of stuff.
And did he have his own band?
Well, this wasn't, not in junior high.
Okay.
I don't remember him having a band in junior high, but once we got to high school, we put a band together with Barry Kay and Tico Bob.
Okay.
And it was a 12-piece soul band, and we were called the Contemporaries.
Wow.
And we were great. We had a guy named Paul Kauser on drums.
Sure.
Dan Willis on bass.
Okay.
I played guitar.
Is that right? Now, was Dave Bennett in that lineup, or is he?
No. We'll get into Dave Bennett after this.
Okay, so you do know Dave Bennett. Then good.
I love Dave Bennett, but he replaced me in the Contemporary.
Oh God!
And I was ready to kick his butt, but he was such a nice guy that I didn't, and he was such a great player.
Wow.
But I love Dave. Dave Bennett was a beautiful, gentle soul who was an incredible guitar player. Died way too early.
Way too early. Speaking of early, I just can't believe how quickly we've burned through our first segment already. We're going to go to commercials. Everybody, you're going to hang around, and you're going to want to tune in next week as well. Gary Ballen is in the chair, calling in from Los Angeles, and he's got stories that are going to blow you away, as you've already heard, and you're going to hear it all right here on Local Licks.
I'm just sitting here counting my money, wondering why you're in love with me, honey, and why everybody is so high-strung these days. The price of living here has gone sky high. The guys like me were always getting by. Babe told me a lean dog can run alone.
The reason why, oh, I can say I have to let you go, baby, and right away after what you did.
Everybody, welcome back to Local Licks. My name is Pat McLoughlin. I am the lead vocalist in the Ohio marketplace for the band called the Gas Pump Jockeys. On a national level, I'm in the classic rock band called the Circle. And Gary, you grew up in my generation. Do you remember the Circle at all?
Of course. I remember when that Red Rubber Ball song came out.
Oh, you do?
It. And I played it.
You did. Where, you mean as a soloist?
Yeah, and I didn't know. I had no idea you were even a musician until today, when I kind of checked your email to me, and it said the Circle, and I didn't know what that meant. And then I looked at it, and I said, "Wow, man, Red Rubber Ball, I love that."
Oh, you're very, very kind. Thank you for doing that. So you actually can remember that song?
Oh, of course.
Well, you know what? I'm going to...
I'm the human jukebox. I don't forget anything.
Well, that is cool. So, Gary, we were discussing offline, and I'm glad you brought it up because we're going to talk about it now. We brought you in with a song by the Byrds, which is, by the way, I picked that song out particularly out of the Byrds catalog because it's my all-time favorite song, Feel a Whole Lot Better. But you often went to the swimming club on James Road. It was called the Holiday Swim Club. And I would ask if you could go into some details about what it was like as at that club, and who did you see there? And you can start with the Byrds if you like.
Well, yeah, the Byrds were there, which was unbelievable. They have like a national act from California come to the Holiday Swim Club, and they played outside. It wasn't inside; it was an outside.
Yeah,
and it was Chris Hillman's 17th birthday.
Really?
So, yeah, and they were amazing. I mean, of what I kind of remember, but I also saw the McCoys do Hang On Sloopy. It was the first time I saw Rick Derringer.
Wow.
And I was right in front of the stage, and it was the first time I saw anybody hammer on. He just blew my mind.
Yeah, what a remarkable talent that young man was and still is.
Yeah, exactly. And all the local groups, the Rebounds, the Dantes, Music Explosion, that was the place to go on the east side. I lived on the east side, so that's where we would go. Plus, I had these friends that were hoods. They were in a group called the East Side Sewer Rats.
I don't know that.
And then there were these other, and there were these other hoods called the Chosen Few. These are all bad dudes, start fights and everything. So it was kind of fun hanging out with those kind of guys because they were very colorful, if you know what I mean.
And it may have been an early training ground to some of the topics we'll be getting into through your interview, with regards to some of the people you hung out with in L.A. later on in life.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy life so far.
All right, we were going with Dave Bennett when the break came, and so you were replaced by, of all people, Dave Bennett, a tremendous guitar player. Did you have any exposure to NYC Skyline in those days?
Okay, so before we get to Dave Bennett, we got to go back to the Contemporaries, because we were the go-to band for all the parties, the bar mitzvahs, for everything. And we had 4 singers out front. We had Daryl Smith, who used to make girls cry. He sang so good.
Yeah.
Pico Bob, Janice Bradley, and
Bennett? No, not Bennett.
Paul Kauser on drums, Skip Lick on guitar, me on guitar, and we had a whole horn section.
Wow.
We had Bruce and Barry Kay. We had trombones. We had Sumner Carter on saxophone. We had Ronnie Roseman. I mean, it was great, and we were really doing great. But Dave Bennett kind of came into the picture, and he was like a virtuoso guitar player.
Yeah.
He was a lot further along than anybody we knew. And Barry Kay, who was kind of the leader, I was kind of the leader of the group, but Barry was the musical leader. Him and Dave got together, and they decided to go a different direction. Okay. So the Contemporaries broke up, and Daryl stayed in the group, sang, and got a couple other guys, and they were also a great band, after the Contemporaries. Yeah.
And I did not see the Contemporaries, but I did see the NYC Skyline, and at that time in my life, never had I seen a guitar player like Dave Bennett.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He was incredible.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Give a shout out to Renee Jackson. She was our other singer in the Contemporaries, and it's been a long time, but I love that group. Yeah. Dave was he was incredible. Yeah. And like I said, I was a pretty tough guy. I played football. I wrestled. I didn't mind fighting every now and then. And when I got kicked out of that band, I was going to kill him.
Oh, my gosh.
Because he just took my place. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was so mad. But he was such a nice guy, and I liked him so much. And we remained friends until he passed away. Yeah.
You mentioned football, too, and I don't think people realize that you were on a football team at Eastmore that featured someone extraordinarily famous.
Look, if it wasn't for my blocking, Archie Griffin would have never been a two-time Heisman Trophy. I was the center. And I'd open up that hole, and he'd fly through it. Yeah, no, I loved playing football at Eastmore, and Archie was a great. We also wrestled together. We're on the wrestling team.
No kidding.
Pico Bob Street was on the wrestling team too.
Your story is just incredible to me. I got to ask you, though, in the summer of your junior to going into being a senior, you go out to your cousin in L.A., and we're going to talk now about Jerry Heller. And we're going to talk about him twice in this interview. Let's talk about the Jerry Heller you're meeting in 1969.
Well, Jerry Heller is my cousin, so I've known him my whole life. Yeah. And Jerry, at the time in the 60s, was a big-time agent in L.A. for the Guess Who, the Grassroots, the Standells, the Animals. He brought Elton John to his first gig at the Troubadour in the United States. He brought Pink Floyd in. So he was big time. And I came out and spent about 2 weeks staying with him and another cousin of mine. And it totally changed my life and blew my mind. He took me to the Whiskey A Go-Go. I was like 17 at the time.
Wow.
And I sat next to Eric Burden and Helton Valentine from the Animals. I'm watching the Flying Burrito Brothers on stage. It's the summer of '69, so it's insane out on the streets, you know.
Unbelievable that somebody as close as a cousin has done so much great work with those bands, and you're rubbing elbows with the best of the day. Unbelievable. I've got to... Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing I just want to mention is I had another cousin, too, Cousin Joanne, who turned me on to something also I wasn't familiar with. It was called the Lighthouse, which was the foremost jazz club maybe in the country, but at least on the West Coast.
Okay.
So I started getting into jazz while I was there, too. I went and saw Mose Allison and Sonny Stitt, these two incredible jazz players. And so, you know, between hanging out with Jerry and hanging out with Joanne, you know, it really kind of lit up my musical, brain.
Well, you're not kidding. I mean, your band, The Contemporaries, really reflected who you were at that time. You were, in fact, a musical contemporary. And, these stories are incredible to me. I've got to go to a break, everybody. When we come back, we're going to pick up some of Jerry's post-high school experiences as we interview Gary Ballen from Central Ohio and ties to so many artists you will not believe. You're going to hear it right here on Local Licks.
When the rains came down in the hollow, playing a new game.
Welcome back, everybody, to Local Licks, where I am interviewing Gary Ballen from calling in to us from Los Angeles. And Gary so far has recounted his early days of going through a number of great experiences at Eastmore High School, not only as an athlete, but certainly as a musician, and seeing some of the great acts of the day. And then you finally get enough credits to graduate from Eastmore. And so, Gary, you start your musical journey through the educational processes of post-education.
Yeah, I barely graduated.
Welcome to the club, my friend.
my grades were okay, but me and some of my buddies went over to Bexley. We got caught by the Bexley police, and this was right before graduation, and they were trying to keep us back, but one of the guys who was with us, a guy named Kevin Jones, his dad was friends with the principal at Bexley. That's the only reason we graduated.
Really?
We were crazy back then.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, you did dodge a bullet.
I did. I've dodged many bullets in my life.
Yes, I was going to say that's just another little prepping for what your career holds for you down the line. Yours more in a literal sense. Yeah. So you started at OSU, but you didn't stay up there very long.
No. I spent 1 quarter at Ohio State. And I moved into an apartment with another friend of mine named Ron Anderson. Okay. Ron played high school ball with me at Eastmore, and we both lived on Napoleon. And he also comes back into my life later on in a major way. You know, we'll come to later on. Okay. So I spent 1 quarter at Ohio State. I really wasn't into it so much, though I did make the rugby team. So I got to play rugby for a little bit and loved that. Wow. And then one of my friends from Hartley, Joe Wolf, we call him Julio. Okay. We didn't know what we wanted to do, so we decided to go to Nelsonville, to Hocking Tech. Sure. Go to technical school and be forest rangers. Oh, now that's off the charts for you. Oh, it was crazy, And this is like the early 70s. Okay, so, yeah. There's a lot of pot around those days, and I always had a lot of pot around me for some reason. So we go down to Nelsonville, and it was crazy down there. But I brought my guitar, and I played in the local clubs, and then we started going to Athens, to Ohio University, and just checking it out, and we found out that the year before it was rated the #1 party school in Playboy. And so I was at Ohio University for 3 years and played at Swanky's and the Deli and all kind of different places. And it was great back then. We went to great concerts. Yes, and Bruce Springsteen and what's his name? Sunshine Go Away.
Jonathan Edwards.
Jonathan Edwards, and I mean, we saw there were a million concerts at the Convocation Center, and so we loved Athens. Lived out in the country, and I had a farmhouse called the Moosebone Lodge, and we would play music all the time. That's all we did was play music and sing and jam and smoke pot and have fun.
But you made it through the program. You graduated.
Well, no, I didn't graduate. I almost graduated, but after 3 years of that, I had no major.
It sounds like music was your major.
It was that's all I wanted to do from 4 years old was to be a musician and be in the music business. Those were the two things I always wanted to do. And I wasn't into teaching, so college was more fun for me than educational.
So you must have been doing very well because you get approached by the infamous Ohio State club down in that downtown area of Ohio State called the Castle.
Yeah, well, what was happening then was there was a couple guys, a guy named Traxler, he owned it. I can't remember his first name. Cliff Aldrich.
Oh, yeah.
Was the brains behind the whole, let's change this hard rock place into a country rock place.
Right.
And so he knew me from Columbus, and he knew me from Athens. And, I did a mellow act at that time. I was solo. So I did, the James Taylor and the Cat Stevens and Paul Simon and lots of Beatles. So they wanted to change the whole bar around from the Castle was a famous place. It was 3 stories tall, Ohio State campus, right across from the campus. And we used to go there and sneak in when we were in high school.
Absolutely.
That's the place you'd go to sneak in.
Yeah.
Tuesday night was wine and cheese night.
Really?
With Gary Ballen and his friends.
Okay.
And we would sit around on a lighted dance floor.
Sure.
Because the dance floor was lighted. We'd sit in a circle, like a bunch of hippies with our legs crossed and have wine and cheese, and I'd be playing my acoustic guitar and play Brown Eyed Girl and Redneck Mother and whatever. And the other 6 nights a week is Strongbow, The Load, it was all heavy, hard rock. But slowly but surely, they started then putting Barnwood on the place, and Cliff was really kind of doing this to have a venue for McGuffey Lane.
Okay.
My girlfriend at the time and first wife, Diane, took me to hear McGuffey Lane when it was a trio.
That's right.
And they blew my mind. It was like Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Yeah.
And it was great. And so that's kind of how Zacharias started. It was me as a solo, and then they brought in John Schwab. He was also a solo at the time.
That's right.
So me and John were the 2 solos, and McGuffey Lane was the house band, and then it turned into an institution.
Incredible that you're there at the beginning. Were you not the first act they ever booked under that Zachariah title?
Numero uno.
Numero uno, everybody. The first person to ever perform at Zacharias.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't remember that or like to rewrite history.
Yeah. But
the truth is, I was the first one in there to change it from rock to country rock.
Unbelievable. And then, as we go down to this last minute, could you overview a little bit of Mr. Brown's descent? Because you spent some time there as well.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'd rather do that on the next segment.
Okay, we can do that.
I just want to say, at Zacharias, I got to open for Jerry Jeff Walker.
One of my favorites.
One of my heroes, you know. Redneck Mother was like my song.
Well, we'll end the segment with Jerry Jeff then for you.
That's good. But the New Riders of Purple Sage, Marshall Tucker, Papa John Creech, all these national acts started coming to Zacharias, and McGuffey Lane started, really blossoming out of that place.
Yeah.
And they were a great band and great guys to hang out with.
And still are, by the way.
I know.
They're just wonderful, wonderful people.
John and, yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, listen, we are going to take that break now. Then we will pick up Mr. Brown's descent. And then, speaking of descent, we're going to descend you into L.A. at the end of this segment and get everybody ready for what you're going to be doing in the late 70s and early 80s. Everybody, Gary Ballen is our guest, telling remarkable stories. And, folks, you're going to tune in next week as well because you ain't heard nothing yet. Everybody, you're listening to Local Licks, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsor.
Yeah, well, I was raised in a sophisticated kind of style. Yeah, my taste in music and women drove my folks and wives. Mom and Dad had a plan for me, and
you're sitting there yakking right in my face. I guess I'm gonna have to put you in your place. If silence was golden, you couldn't raise a dime, because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime.
Everybody, welcome back to Local Licks. I'm Pat McLoughlin, the lead vocalist of the Gas Pump Jockeys. And a national level, I'm one of the members of the classic rock band The Circle. Our guest today, Gary Ballen, has been telling just one great story after another. He is he was at the end of the last segment sharing some of the experiences he had at the infamous Zacharias Red Eye Saloon with one of our good friends, John Schwab and McGuffey Lane, among many acts that you perform with. And then you take another role within the campus community. If I may just kind of pick up the ball and hand it to you.
Yeah, sure. I had another friend of mine named Fuzzy, and me and Fuzzy decided to promote concerts at another great bar in Columbus, Mr. Brown's.
Yeah, amazing bar.
And it was kind of a dive bar, but all the bands played there, all the local bands.
That's right.
And they were great. When I was in California in the summer of '69, I told you my cousin Joanne took me to the Lighthouse. So I had in my mind a jazz club in Columbus. So between me and my friend Fuzzy, we opened a jazz club at Mr. Brown's that we called Major Chords. And we brought in not only jazz acts, but folk acts. So we brought in like Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, Dave Van Ronk, who was a big influence on Bob Dylan.
You bet.
We brought in Amos something. But we also did a lot of jazz groups. We had Mose Allison and Sonny Stitt, the two guys I saw in California. I brought them in. We had Eddie Harris. We had Yusef Lateef. We had Eddie Jefferson, Richie Cole. So all these really famous jazz players were now coming to Mr. Brown's, which we called Major Chords. And so I owned the sound system. I opened the shows a lot of times with a trio I had, Gary Ballen and friends, so we'd play more jazzy stuff, and we'd promote these concerts, and it was great. It was a real learning experience, and we brought some classy acts to Columbus. And
to your credit now, you are expanding your knowledge of the music business in the literal sense. You are now promoting and booking and learning the business side. Exactly. Yeah. It's like I always wanted to, even at a young age, I never wanted to be a star. I never really cared that much. I just wanted to play for fun. I started learning, I owned a sound system, owned a sound company, owned a T-shirt company, which I also did merchandising for McGuffey Lane for a while. And I started a promotion company with my friend Fuzzy. So, yeah, I was always doing the business. And of course, you were inspired by Jerry Heller, your cousin that we brought up, and you did one more thing which no one's really talked about. You did Rally in the Alley with Willie Phoenix. And yeah, that was my last day in Columbus. Going back to elementary school, my friend Barry Kay. Yeah, he had a band. He went to Athens, went to OU, had a band called Kid Brother. Okay, and that band got signed to a major record deal out of California. Wow. And they moved to California,
and their dad, Big Ed, Eddie K., who I used to sell bagels for on Kellner Road, which is now Block's Bagels.
Oh, that's
I was
great.
in one that was called Hot Bagels, yeah. But Eddie K., he leased out a big room in Northridge, California, part of L.A., for a rehearsal studio. And that's where Kid Brother rehearsed to go on tour. So I got a call from Barry sometime in 1978. He said, Gary, we're going on tour. We want you to come out and manage our studio. So that was the call I've been waiting for.
Wow.
So I did Rally in the Alley, played to about 5,000 people in the streets, loaded up a van with a big community light and sound system I owned, and drove to California and started managing a rehearsal studio called Big Ed Productions.